I'm Abigail Miller, 29 years old, and last June I stood in a bridal boutique staring at my reflection, wondering if I'd be walking down the aisle alone. My phone still displayed the text from my mother: "Your wedding to that teacher is a trivial event for someone at the bottom of society like you've chosen to be. We won't be attending." My hands trembled as I smoothed the ivory satin. After years of seeking their approval, my parents' rejection of the most important day of my life became the unexpected catalyst for my journey to self-worth. Before I share how I transformed their absence into my greatest strength, where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments, hit subscribe, and join me as I reveal how parental rejection became my pathway to freedom. Growing up in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most prestigious neighborhoods, my childhood looked perfect from the outside. Our brownstone townhouse with its manicured garden and historical significance was featured in architectural magazines. My father, Richard Miller, was a managing partner at a prominent investment firm, while my mother, Eleanor, practiced corporate law for Fortune 500 companies. We vacationed in the Hamptons every summer and spent winter breaks skiing in Aspen. I attended Phillips Academy, wore designer clothes, and had every material advantage a child could want. What those magazine spreads didn't capture was the emotional wasteland inside our perfectly appointed home. My parents weren't cruel, they were absent. Physically present for scheduled appearances at school functions when it reflected well on them, but emotionally unreachable behind their perpetual screens and calendar conflicts. "Appearances matter more than anything, Abigail," my mother would say while scrutinizing my outfit before a charity gala. "The right connections determine your entire future." I was 7 the first time she explained this to me, adjusting my posture before introducing me to the governor. My father reinforced this worldview in his own way. "The Miller name has weight in this city. Don't disappoint us by associating with just anyone," he cautioned when dropping me off at school. Their focus was always on status, who I spoke to, which families I befriended, how I represented the Miller brand in public. I tried desperately to gain their approval through achievement. When I won the regional art competition in 4th grade, I rushed home clutching my blue ribbon, only to find an empty house and a note from our housekeeper, Margaret, explaining both parents were at an important fundraiser. My painting of our family holding hands, a scene that existed only in my imagination, was eventually hung in the back hallway near the service entrance. My academic achievements earned brief nods of acknowledgement but were quickly followed by pressure to do more. An A- was met with, "What happened to the other points?" A lead role in the school play prompted, "That's nice, but is it helping your college applications?" The constant push towards status and achievement left little room for authentic connection. Dinner conversations revolved around networking opportunities and strategic relationship building rather than genuine interest in my thoughts or feelings. I became adept at parroting their values back to them, learning early that this was the only way to receive even fleeting attention. My maternal grandmother, Sophia, provided the only real emotional warmth in my childhood. During the rare weekends I spent at her modest Cambridge apartment, she encouraged my artistic interests, displaying my paintings prominently on her refrigerator and walls. "You have a gift for capturing feeling in color, Abby," she'd say, using the nickname my parents considered too informal. "Never let anyone dim your creative light." During those precious weekends, I experienced what family could feel like, being valued simply for existing rather than for what I could achieve or who I could impress. We baked cookies, visited museums not for networking but for the joy of art, and talked about books, feelings, and dreams. When grandmother Sophia died during my sophomore year of high school, I lost my emotional anchor. The funeral was brief, efficient according to my mother, who was back at work the same afternoon. My junior year marked my first significant act of rebellion. The school counselor recommended I apply for a summer art program in New York. My parents expected me to intern at my father's firm as we'd always planned. The argument that followed was cold and tactical rather than passionate. My parents didn't yell, they strategized. "This art program does nothing for your Harvard application," my father stated flatly. "The Miller name has secured you an advantage at the firm. Why would you squander that?" My mother added, her tone suggesting I was being not just disappointing but irrational. For the first time, I held my ground. I want to develop my portfolio. Art is what I love. Their response was calculated. If you insist on this detour, you'll have to find your own transportation and spending money. We won't fund recreational activities disguised as career preparation. They expected this financial obstacle to end the discussion. I babysat, sold commissioned artwork to teachers and family friends, and made it to New York. Those 6 weeks transformed me. Surrounded by students who valued creativity and authentic expression, I glimpsed a world beyond the status-driven existence my parents prescribed. I returned home with a clearer vision for my future, one that increasingly diverged from the Miller master plan. Senior year became a silent battleground. I applied to Rhode Island School of Design alongside the Ivy League schools my parents preferred. When acceptance letters arrived, the choice crystallized the growing divide between us. Harvard Business School represented the path of parental approval, RISD embodied my own dreams. The night I announced my decision to attend RISD, my mother set down her fork precisely on her plate's edge. You're choosing to throw away generations of connections and opportunity for a hobby, Abigail. My father's approach was more practical. We'll fund your education at RISD under one condition: you double major in business or marketing. At least then you'll have something to fall back on when this creative phase passes. Their conditional support was painful but unsurprising. I accepted their terms, knowing the double major would be challenging but determined to prove my commitment to art wasn't a phase. As high school graduation approached, I sensed the first significant shift in our relationship. I was no longer seeking their approval but rather negotiating for my independence. The graduation party they hosted was perfect for their social circle but alien to me, business associates and family friends making connections while barely acknowledging the supposed guest of honor. I overheard my mother explaining to her colleague, "Abigail's taking a different path for undergraduate, but don't worry, she'll be back on track for an MBA afterward." That night, standing in my bedroom surrounded by graduation gifts, mostly practical items for my eventual corporate career, I made a private promise to myself. I would build a life based on authentic connection rather than strategic advantage. The specific shape of that life remained blurry, but for the first time, I felt entitled to pursue it, regardless of whether it earned the Miller stamp of approval. Providence, Rhode Island felt worlds away from Beacon Hill, despite being just an hour's drive. My freshman dorm room at RISD was half the size of my bedroom at home, with cinder block walls instead of crown molding, and a roommate who arrived with electric blue hair and suitcases plastered with band stickers. Caroline was from Seattle, knew nothing about Boston social hierarchies, and cared even less. When I mentioned my father's firm during orientation week, she blinked blankly and asked if I wanted to grab coffee at the student center instead. That first semester was disorienting. Without the familiar framework of social positioning and achievement metrics, I felt oddly weightless. My classes pushed me creatively in ways that were simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying. Professors weren't impressed by my family name or connections, they cared about my perspective, voice, and willingness to take risks. "Your technical skills are strong, Abigail, but your work feels safe," my foundation year professor commented on my first portfolio review. "I want to see what happens when you stop trying to make perfect work and start making honest work." His feedback pierced years of conditioning. I'd been raised to value flawless execution above authentic expression. The idea that imperfection might actually strengthen my art was revolutionary and terrifying. Meanwhile, my business classes felt like a lifeline to my former world: structured, clear objectives, quantifiable results. I excelled in these courses automatically, operating on the programming my parents had installed. But they left me feeling empty in a way I couldn't articulate yet. My monthly calls home followed a script. My parents inquired about my business courses first, art classes as an afterthought. I emphasized my 4.0 GPA, knowing this was the currency they valued. When I mentioned a gallery showing that included one of my pieces, my father interrupted to tell me about a former classmate's daughter who had just been accepted to Harvard Law. The distance between us grew with each conversation. Their Christmas gift that first year was telling: a leather portfolio embossed with the initials AEM and an expensive pen set more suited for a corporate boardroom than an art studio. Caroline witnessed my silent struggle. "You know you don't have to be who they want you to be, right?" she said one night as I stressed over a business assignment while my art projects called to me. Her simple statement hit like a revelation. Sophomore year brought new friendships that further expanded my world. Marcus, a film student whose parents were public school teachers, approached creativity with a freedom I envied. Zoe, studying textile design after walking away from a pre-med track, understood the weight of defying family expectations. Through their eyes, I began to see my upbringing not as the advantage my parents claimed but as a gilded cage I was still trying to escape. My anxiety peaked during my second-year review. Despite strong evaluations, I couldn't shake the feeling I was failing at some fundamental level. The panic attacks started small, racing heart before presentations, insomnia before deadlines, but gradually intensified until I found myself hyperventilating in a bathroom stall after a particularly challenging critique. The university counselor I finally visited helped name what I was experiencing. "It sounds like you're carrying the weight of conflicting identities, Abigail. The person your parents groomed you to be is at war with the person you're discovering you actually are." Those therapy sessions became sacred space, the first place I could articulate the emptiness beneath my privileged upbringing. I began to understand how my parents' conditional love had shaped my self-worth, tying it to achievement and social position rather than intrinsic value. By junior year, I was making deliberate choices to define myself. I legally shortened my name to Abby on my student ID and email signature, a small act of self-determination that felt enormous. I accepted an internship at a small, innovative design studio rather than the prestigious corporate position my father had arranged. I started dating without running background checks on potential partners, a practice my mother had actually suggested during my high school years. The summer before senior year, I made another pivotal decision. Instead of returning to Boston, I subleased an apartment in Providence and took a job at a local cafe to support myself while developing my senior portfolio. My announcement was met with icy disapproval. "This is foolish, Abigail. You're turning down valuable networking opportunities to serve coffee," my mother said during our increasingly infrequent phone call. "It's 3 months, Mom. I'm gaining independence and focusing on my portfolio." "Independence is overrated when it comes at the cost of advancement," she replied. That summer of genuine self-sufficiency, budgeting my modest paycheck, creating art without academic pressure, forming friendships with people from all walks of life, clarified what I wanted for my future. My senior portfolio focused on authentic connection in a digital age, featuring illustrations and designs that celebrated vulnerability and imperfection. Graduation approached with a job offer from a small but respected Chicago design studio. When I told my parents I was accepting the position instead of returning to Boston, my father's disappointment was palpable. "We've kept your room, Abigail. Richardson at Berkeley and Stone has an opening in their marketing department that would be perfect while you figure out your next steps." "This isn't a temporary step, Dad. This is my career path." My mother's lips thinned. "A career should build something substantial. This sounds like you're running away rather than towards something meaningful." "It is meaningful to me," I replied, finally understanding that their definition of success would never accommodate my choices. Moving to Chicago with just 2 suitcases and my portfolio felt both terrifying and exhilarating. My apartment was a studio in Wicker Park, small but flooded with natural light, perfect for my weekend art projects. The design firm challenged me professionally, valuing fresh perspectives over established conventions. For the first time, my creativity became an asset rather than a liability. My parents' visits were infrequent and awkward, filled with barely disguised critiques of my modest lifestyle and subtle suggestions about MBA programs or law school applications. I developed an arsenal of deflection techniques, changing subjects and maintaining superficial harmony while protecting my hard-won independence. 3 years into building my Chicago life, I attended a gallery opening for a local photographer whose work our firm had featured in a campaign. The exposed brick walls displayed striking black and white portraits of Chicago residents from all walks of life. As I studied a particularly moving image of an elderly woman's hands, a voice beside me said, she was a piano teacher for 60 years. Those hands shaped generations of musicians. I turned to find a tall man with kind eyes and an engaging smile. I'm Nathan Carter, he said, extending his hand. The photographer dragged me here for moral support. Abby Miller, I replied, noticing his relaxed confidence and genuine warmth. The designer who worked on promoting this show. That chance meeting shifted the trajectory of my life again. Nathan taught art at a public high school, encouraging creativity in students often overlooked by the system. His passion for accessibility in arts education resonated deeply with my evolving values. Our first date stretched from coffee into dinner as we discovered shared perspectives on authenticity and purpose. As our relationship developed, I observed Nathan's family dynamics with fascination and a touch of envy. The Carters weren't wealthy or socially connected by my parents' standards, but their interactions were rich with genuine affection and acceptance. Sunday dinners at their modest suburban home featured lively debates where everyone's opinion held equal weight regardless of age or status. I love how you are with your parents, I confessed to Nathan after one such evening. It's so real. Isn't that how all families are? He asked, then registered my expression. Oh, Abby. What was it like growing up in your house? That conversation opened the floodgates. For the first time, I fully articulated the emotional austerity of my childhood and the ongoing struggle to define myself apart from the Miller legacy. Nathan listened without judgment, helping me see that my parents' emotional limitations reflected their own issues rather than my worthiness. When Nathan proposed a year later, he did so not with an extravagant gesture but with profound sincerity. We were painting a mural at his school on a Saturday, surrounded by volunteer students, when he knelt beside me, brush in hand, and asked me to build a life with him. The simple gold band with a small emerald held more meaning than any status symbol my parents would have approved. I said yes immediately, my heart certain despite knowing this choice would widen the gulf between my parents and me. The authenticity I'd been seeking had finally taken human form in my relationship with Nathan, and I wasn't willing to compromise it for anyone, not even the people who had given me life. Nathan came into my life when I'd finally started believing I deserved genuine connection. We met at that gallery opening in Chicago where his best friend Marcus was showcasing photography. Nathan stood out immediately, not because he was trying to, but because he wasn't trying at all. In a room where most people were performing sophistication, he was simply present, wearing a slightly wrinkled button-down shirt and asking thoughtful questions about the artwork. What drew me to Nathan wasn't the surface-level attributes my parents would have evaluated, his career prospects or family connections. It was his authentic engagement with the world. As an art teacher at a public high school in a working-class Chicago neighborhood, he spoke about his students with a respect and enthusiasm that revealed his character. They're brilliant in ways the standardized tests can't measure, he told me on our second date, showing me photos of murals his students had created. Javier can't sit still for a written exam, but give him a brush and he'll tell you his whole life story through color and movement. Our relationship unfolded naturally, without the strategic calculation that had characterized my parents' approach to relationships. We didn't discuss 5-year plans or career trajectories. Instead, we explored Chicago's neighborhoods, volunteered at community art events, and had long conversations about everything from color theory to childhood memories. 6 months in, Nathan invited me to his parents' home in Evanston for Sunday dinner. I spent hours choosing the right outfit, vacillating between the designer clothes my mother would have deemed appropriate and something more casual. In the end, I chose a simple sundress, but my anxiety remained high as we approached the modest 2-story house with its well-tended garden. Martha Carter greeted me with a warm hug before I could even offer the flowers I'd brought. Nathan talks about you constantly, Abby. We're so happy to finally meet you. James Carter, Nathan's father, emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron and carrying a wooden spoon. Hope you like lasagna. It's nothing fancy, but it's a family favorite. The contrast between this welcome and my parents' formal dinner parties was stark. The Carters' home wasn't designed to impress, it was designed to live in. Family photos covered the refrigerator, books spilled from shelves, and the dining table showed marks of decades of family meals. Throughout dinner, they asked questions about my work and opinions, genuinely listening to my answers without evaluating their strategic value. "Your illustrations are beautiful," Martha said, examining my portfolio with genuine interest. "You capture such emotion in your lines." When I explained that my corporate clients usually preferred more polished, conventional designs, James nodded thoughtfully. "Must be challenging to balance artistic integrity with client expectations." Their validation of my creative work, without qualification or comparison to more prestigious careers, moved me deeply. That evening, driving back to the city, I found myself crying. "What's wrong?" Nathan asked, concerned. "Nothing's wrong," I assured him. "It's just, your parents see me. The actual me, not some projection of who they think I should be." Our relationship deepened over the next year. We moved in together, combining our belongings in a sun-filled apartment in Lincoln Park. Nathan's approach to life, prioritizing meaning over status, genuine connection over strategic networking, continued to heal the parts of me that had been damaged by my upbringing. When he proposed, it wasn't at an exclusive restaurant with a diamond selected for its impression value. We were volunteering at a community arts day at his school, covered in paint after helping students create a mural. As the teenagers packed up their supplies, Nathan knelt beside me, paintbrush still in hand. "Abby Miller, you've taught me that love isn't about perfection, it's about authentic connection. Will you continue creating this masterpiece with me? Will you marry me?" The ring was simple, a small emerald that had belonged to his grandmother set in a gold band, but its meaning was profound. I said yes through happy tears, surrounded by applauding students who had apparently been in on the plan. That evening, excitement bubbling within me, I called my parents. Despite our strained relationship, I wanted to share this significant life development with them. The call went to voicemail. I left a message asking them to call back for important news, trying to keep my voice neutral. My mother returned my call the following day during her lunch break. "Abigail, I have 15 minutes. What's your news?" I took a deep breath. "I'm engaged, Mom. Nathan proposed yesterday, and I said yes." The pause that followed lasted several seconds. "I see. The art teacher, correct? Have you set a date?" "Not yet, but we're thinking next spring. I'd love for you and Dad to meet him before then. Maybe we could visit Boston, or you could come to Chicago? Your father's schedule is quite full with the Singapore expansion, and I'm in court until the quarter's end." Her tone remained businesslike. "Send us details when you have them. We'll need to check our calendars." I swallowed my disappointment. "Of course. I understand you're both busy. Abigail," she added before hanging up, "I hope you've considered a prenuptial agreement. Given the family assets, it would be prudent." That brief conversation set the tone for what followed. When Nathan and I visited Boston 2 months later, my parents hosted a dinner that felt more like a deposition than a celebration. They questioned Nathan about his career prospects, financial planning, and family background with barely concealed disapproval. "Teaching is certainly noble," my father commented, swirling his expensive bourbon. "But surely you have plans beyond the classroom? Administration, perhaps?" Nathan handled their interrogation with grace. "I love working directly with students. For me, success isn't measured by title or salary but by impact." My mother's smile tightened. How refreshingly idealistic. Later that night, alone in my childhood bedroom, Nathan held me as I cried. "They'll never accept that I've chosen a different path, will they?" "Maybe not," he acknowledged. "But their approval isn't necessary for our happiness, Abby." Wedding planning became another battlefield. When I mentioned we'd found a renovated industrial space filled with local art for our venue, my mother countered with the Boston Harbor Hotel's ballroom, which they'd reserve as a gift. "We're planning a small ceremony in Chicago, Mom. That's where our community is now." "Community?" She sounded genuinely perplexed. Abigail, weddings aren't about community. They're about family tradition and social positioning. The people who matter will expect certain standards. My father took a more direct approach, offering to contribute financially only if we used their preferred vendors and followed traditional protocols. We're willing to support this decision, but the Miller name has certain associations. The event should reflect that. Nathan and I discussed their conditions and ultimately declined their financial assistance. We'll create a celebration that reflects our values, not my family name, I told them. We'd rather have a meaningful event we can afford than an extravagant display that doesn't represent us. The months of planning brought unexpected joy as we designed a ceremony centered on authentic connection rather than impression management. Nathan's parents helped where they could, his mother assembled centerpieces, his father built our wedding arch by hand. My Chicago friends rallied around with practical support and emotional encouragement. I still harbored hope that my parents would eventually come around, that they would recognize the genuine happiness I'd found and validate my choices. I reserved front row seats for them at the ceremony and carefully handwrote their invitations. 2 months before the wedding, I called to confirm they'd received the invitation and discuss their travel plans. That conversation would change everything. I can still recall every detail of that April afternoon when my world tilted on its axis. The Chicago spring sunshine streamed through our apartment windows as I settled onto the couch, phone in hand, heart fluttering with nervous anticipation. Nathan squeezed my shoulder supportively before heading out to give me privacy for the call with my parents. "You've got this," he whispered, kissing my forehead. "Whatever happens, we're building our life together." I dialed the familiar number, rehearsing travel logistics in my mind. When would they arrive? Should we arrange a dinner with Nathan's parents the night before? Would they prefer a hotel or our guest room? My mother answered on the 4th ring, her voice crisp and professional as always. "Abigail, this isn't the best time. Your father and I are preparing for the Harrington Foundation Gala." "I'll be quick, Mom. I just wanted to confirm you received the invitation and discuss your travel arrangements for the wedding in June." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever, finally broken by my mother's measured tone. "About that, Abigail. Your father and I have given this considerable thought." Something in her voice made my stomach clench. "We've decided we won't be attending." The words hit like a physical blow. What? Why? "Frankly, Abigail, this event doesn't align with our priorities right now. Your father has the Tokyo merger, and I'm overseeing the new associate selection process." "It's my wedding, Mom," I managed, my voice barely audible. "Yes, and we've made our position clear about your choices. This wedding to that teacher is a trivial event for someone at the bottom of society like you've chosen to be. We won't be attending." The calculated cruelty of her words left me speechless. My father's voice suddenly came on the line, they were on speakerphone. "We'll send a gift, of course," he added, as if this were a reasonable compromise. "Perhaps something for your new home. We can always celebrate properly when you both come to your senses about your future." Come to our senses? I finally found my voice, though it trembled. "We're building a life based on meaningful work and genuine connection. What exactly should we come to our senses about?" "Abigail," my mother interjected, "dramatics aren't productive. You've chosen this path despite our guidance. We've simply chosen not to endorse it with our presence." "This isn't about endorsement," I said, tears streaming down my face. "This is about being parents. About showing up for your only child on one of the most important days of her life." "We've always shown up where it matters," my father countered. "Private school tuition, college expenses, introductions to the right people. We've provided every advantage." "Except love," I whispered. "Except acceptance." "That's quite enough," my mother concluded. "We should go. The car will be here shortly." "So that's it?" I asked. 30 years as your daughter, and you can't give me one day? Don't be theatrical, Abigail. We'll speak again when you're thinking more clearly." The line went dead. I sat motionless, phone still pressed to my ear, as if some miracle might bring different words through the connection. When Nathan returned an hour later, he found me in the same position, tears dried on my face. "They're not coming," I said flatly when he knelt before me. "My wedding is apparently a trivial event not worth their valuable time." Nathan's expression shifted from concern to controlled anger. "Their loss," he said finally, pulling me into his arms. "Their tremendous, inexcusable loss." The days that followed passed in a blur of grief and confusion. I vacillated between devastation and rage, between canceling the wedding entirely and defiantly moving forward. Nathan held space for all of it, never pushing me toward any particular decision. "Whatever you need," he assured me. "If you want to postpone, we'll postpone. If you want to elope, we'll elope. If you want to proceed exactly as planned, we'll do that too." I called in sick to work for the first time in my professional life, spending 3 days alternately crying and staring blankly at our apartment walls. The rejection triggered every insecurity my childhood had instilled, that I wasn't enough, that my worth was tied to achievement and status, that love was conditional upon meeting others' expectations. When I finally returned to the design studio, my colleagues noticed my subdued demeanor but respected my privacy. Only Lucy, my closest work friend and designated maid of honor, knew the full story. "Those aren't parents, Abby," she fumed during our lunch break. "Those are status-obsessed robots who somehow produced a human daughter with an actual heart." Her righteous indignation on my behalf helped, but the wound remained raw. I found myself obsessively checking my phone, half expecting my parents to call with a change of heart. They didn't. Nathan's parents reacted with stunned disbelief when we shared the news during Sunday dinner. "I don't understand," Martha said, genuine confusion in her eyes. "How could any parent miss their child's wedding?" James shook his head slowly. "I'm so sorry, Abby. Truly." Their compassion nearly undid me again. "I keep wondering what's wrong with me," I admitted, voice breaking. "What I could have done differently to be the daughter they wanted." Martha reached across the table to grasp my hand. "Nothing is wrong with you, honey. Some people aren't capable of seeing beyond their own narrow vision of success. That's their limitation, not yours." That evening, as we prepared to leave, James hugged me tightly. "I hope you know you're already part of our family, wedding or no wedding." His simple acceptance cracked something open inside me, grief, certainly, but also the first glimmer of freedom from my parents' approval. What if their absence wasn't a reflection of my worth but of their own limitations? 2 weeks after my parents' rejection, I seriously considered postponing the wedding. The thought of those empty front row seats felt unbearable. Nathan and I discussed options late into the night. "Maybe a small ceremony now and a bigger celebration later," he suggested. "Or we could rearrange the seating so their absence isn't so visible." Nothing felt right until an unexpected conversation shifted my perspective entirely. Nathan's grandmother Emma, a spry 82-year-old with remarkable insight, invited me to tea at her assisted living apartment. "Nathan told me what happened," she said, serving Earl Grey in delicate cups. It reminded me of my own wedding day. She shared how her father had refused to attend her wedding to Nathan's grandfather because he was Catholic while her family was Protestant. "My father said he wouldn't endorse the marriage by attending." Those exact words. "What did you do?" I asked. "I cried for days," she admitted. Then I realized something important. My wedding wasn't about who wasn't there, it was about who was there. About the community witnessing our commitment. She reached for a photo album, showing me a black and white wedding portrait. "See that empty space by my mother? That's where my father should have been." For years, I saw only that emptiness when I looked at this picture. She turned the page to show the reception. Then one day, I noticed all these other photos, friends laughing, my new husband's family welcoming me, the community surrounding us with love. I'd been so focused on the one person missing that I'd missed the dozens who showed up. Emma closed the album gently. "Don't let their absence overshadow everyone's presence, Abby. Don't give them that power." Her words resonated deeply. That night, I made my decision. The wedding would proceed as planned, but with one significant change: I would no longer be hoping for my parents to change their minds. Instead, I would fully embrace the community that had chosen to support us. I'm done waiting for approval I may never receive, I told Nathan. I want to marry you surrounded by people who truly see and value us, exactly as we are. In the weeks that followed, I began reimagining our wedding not as a family obligation but as a genuine celebration of chosen family. We rewrote portions of the ceremony to emphasize community support rather than traditional family roles. When Nathan suggested his father might walk me down the aisle, I considered it carefully before declining. I think I need to walk myself, I explained. Not because I don't appreciate the offer, but because it feels important to literally take this step on my own terms. The final blow came a week before the wedding. A sleek white envelope arrived containing a check for an obscene amount of money and a brief note: "For your new life. Best wishes, Richard and Eleanor Miller." No personal message. No terms of endearment. Just a financial transaction dressed as a gift, the only language of care they understood. That evening, after much reflection, I did something that would have been unthinkable months earlier. I returned the check with a handwritten letter. "Dear Mom and Dad. Thank you for your gift, but I'm returning it. What I wanted for my wedding wasn't financial support but your presence. I'm marrying a man of integrity and compassion who values me for exactly who I am. While I wish you could see the joy he brings to my life, I understand now that your approval isn't necessary for my happiness. My door remains open if you ever wish to be part of our lives in a meaningful way. With love, Abby." Sending that letter was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. For the first time, I wasn't seeking their approval or attempting to bridge the gap between us. I was simply stating my truth and establishing a boundary, one that honored my worth independent of their validation. The night before our wedding, surrounded by friends during our casual rehearsal dinner, I realized Grandmother Emma was right. The focus of our celebration wasn't who was missing, but who had chosen to be present. Looking around at the faces of people who truly saw and accepted us, I felt something unexpected: not just resignation about my parents' absence, but genuine peace. The 6 weeks between my parents' rejection and our wedding day became a period of unexpected transformation. What began as a devastating blow gradually evolved into an opportunity to create something more authentic than I'd initially imagined. With the weight of parental expectations lifted, painfully, but definitively, Nathan and I found ourselves free to redesign our celebration to truly reflect our values. Our first decision was to reimagine the ceremony itself. The traditional wedding script suddenly felt hollow, filled with conventions that held little personal meaning. Why were we having a formal bridal party? Why was I planning to wear white? Was I including certain elements simply because that's what weddings look like? "Let's start from scratch," Nathan suggested one evening as we sat surrounded by half-completed wedding favors, tiny succulents in hand-painted pots that my mother would have deemed crafty rather than elegant. If we were designing this day only for us, with no external expectations, what would it include? That question became our guiding principle. We spent a weekend creating a new vision board, literally cutting up our original plans and reassembling the pieces that felt meaningful while discarding those that didn't. The formal seated dinner became a relaxed farm-to-table feast with long communal tables. The traditional white wedding cake transformed into an assortment of pies from our favorite local bakery. The formal bridal party shrank from 6 attendants each to just Lucy and Marcus, the friends who had witnessed our relationship from the beginning. Even my dress changed. The structured satin gown I'd chosen with my mother's voice in mind gave way to a flowing bohemian design that felt more like my authentic style. When I tried it on in Lucy's apartment, having cancelled my final fitting at the bridal salon my mother had insisted upon, tears sprang to my eyes. "This is me," I whispered, studying my reflection. "This is actually me." Lucy squeezed my shoulder. "It always was you, Abby. You're just finally giving yourself permission to see it." Nathan's family threw themselves into helping with our reimagined celebration. Martha organized a group of friends to create handmade paper flowers for centerpieces. James and Nathan's brother constructed an arbor from reclaimed wood for our ceremony. Even Nathan's teenage students volunteered to create artwork for the venue walls, portraits and landscapes that transformed the industrial space into a gallery celebrating connection. My Chicago friends proved equally supportive. My colleagues at the design studio created custom illustrations for our invitations and program. Lucy hosted a wedding workshop weekend where friends gathered to assemble decorations while sharing stories and laughter. The community we'd built was literally creating the foundation for our marriage. The most profound change, however, was in our ceremony itself. Working with our officiant, a former literature professor turned interfaith minister, we crafted vows that spoke to our actual journey rather than generic promises. "I promise to see you," Nathan's draft began. "Not who others expect you to be or who you sometimes pretend to be, but your authentic self in all its complexity." My vows acknowledged the healing our relationship had brought. "You've taught me that love doesn't require perfection or performance. With you, I am enough exactly as I am." 3 weeks before the wedding, the phone rang during dinner. Seeing my parents' number, my heart leaped with irrational hope. Had they reconsidered? "Abigail," my mother began without preamble, "we've received your note returning our gift. Your father and I have discussed the situation further." I held my breath, fingers crossed childishly under the table. "We're willing to attend the wedding under certain conditions." Not "we've changed our minds." Not "we're sorry." But "we're willing, under certain conditions." What conditions? I asked, already feeling my newfound confidence wavering. "First, we'd like to contribute financially after all, but with appropriate recognition, perhaps as hosts on the invitation, though I realize it's late for reprinting. Second, we'd prefer if James didn't participate in the ceremony. Having your father walk you down the aisle would be more appropriate." "James isn't walking me down the aisle," I clarified. "I'm walking myself." "That's precisely the sort of unconventional choice we're concerned about, Abigail. A wedding is a traditional affair. If we're to attend, we'd expect certain standards to be maintained." The old Abby might have capitulated, might have reshaped her wedding yet again to accommodate these demands. But something had shifted fundamentally within me during those weeks of redesigning our celebration around authenticity rather than appearance. "Mom," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I appreciate that you're reconsidering attending. That means a lot to me. But I can't accept conditions on your presence. We've created a celebration that genuinely reflects who we are. You're welcome to attend exactly as it is, but I won't change it to meet your expectations." The silence that followed felt different from previous confrontations, less charged with anxiety, more grounded in my own certainty. "I see," she finally responded. "I'll discuss this with your father and get back to you." They never did. The call ended without resolution, and no further communication came. Yet rather than devastation, I felt an unexpected peace. I had stood my ground not from anger or rebellion, but from a place of genuine self-respect. The next morning, I shared the conversation with Nathan. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "The weird thing is, I'm proud of me too," I realized aloud. "I think that's a first." As our wedding day approached, one final decision remained. What would we do about those empty front row seats? Every option felt laden with significance. Leaving them empty seemed like giving absence too much power. Filling them with other guests might appear disrespectful. Eliminating them altogether felt like erasing part of my history. The solution came unexpectedly the day before our wedding. The florist arrived to set up, including the 2 small memorial arrangements we'd ordered to honor Nathan's deceased grandparents. Seeing them placed on chairs reserved for those physically absent but spiritually present, I had a sudden insight. What if we leave my parents' seats empty but place something there that represents hope rather than absence? I suggested to Nathan. Not flowers for the dead, but something living, something that could still grow? The next morning, as guests arrived for our ceremony, they passed 2 front row seats containing small olive trees in handcrafted pots. Attached to each was a simple card reading, "Reserved in hope." Empty chairs, full hearts. The night before the wedding, one final package arrived from my parents, an expensive crystal vase from our registry with a printed gift card, "Best wishes on your special day. Richard and Eleanor Miller." After a moment's consideration, I placed it back in its box and set it aside. This time, I wouldn't return it with a note attempting to bridge the unbridgeable. Instead, I would simply acknowledge it later with a polite thank you card, one small step toward establishing a new, more honest relationship built on who we actually were rather than who they wished us to be. That night, surrounded by friends at our improvised rehearsal dinner in Nathan's backyard, I looked around at the faces of people who had chosen to support us, really see us, and felt a surprising lightness. For the first time, I understood that while the absence of my parents would always hold a certain sadness, it no longer defined me. Tomorrow I would marry the man I loved, surrounded by authentic connection rather than social obligation. The path to this moment had been painful but necessary. In losing what I thought I needed, my parents' approval, I had gained something far more valuable, the freedom to define family on my own terms. June 17th dawned clear and perfect, sunlight streaming through the curtains of the hotel suite where Lucy, my maid of honor, and I prepared for the day ahead. The room buzzed with quiet activity, the makeup artist arranging her palette, the photographer capturing candid moments, Lucy steaming my dress with careful attention. "How are you feeling?" Lucy asked, her eyes meeting mine in the mirror as she arranged my hair. The question was weighted with understanding. How was I feeling on my wedding day, knowing my parents had chosen not to attend? The answer surprised even me. "I feel present," I replied after a moment's reflection. "Not perfect, not without sadness, but fully here in a way I'm not sure I would have been if I was still trying to meet their expectations." Lucy squeezed my shoulder. "That might be the healthiest thing I've ever heard you say, Abby Miller." "Soon to be Abby Carter," I corrected with a smile. The getting ready process held a different energy than I'd initially envisioned. Instead of my mother fussing over details or offering last-minute advice tinged with criticism, I was surrounded by women who celebrated rather than evaluated me. My college roommate Caroline flew in from Seattle, bringing her infectious laugh and genuine excitement. Nathan's mother Martha arrived with coffee and pastries, embracing me with the warm acceptance that still felt like a gift. "You look beautiful, Abby," she said, her eyes misting slightly. "Just radiant." The dress I'd chosen after discarding the formal gown my mother would have preferred hung simply on its hanger, flowing ivory silk with delicate embroidery, comfortable and authentic rather than impressive. As Lucy and Caroline helped me into it, I caught glimpses of my reflection and barely recognized myself, not because the styling was so transformative, but because the woman looking back seemed so at peace, so genuinely present in her own skin. "Nathan's going to lose his mind when he sees you," Caroline predicted, adjusting my simple floral crown. The photographer captured these moments quietly, the genuine laughter, the supportive touches, the occasional tears quickly wiped away. These were the wedding morning photos I would treasure, not perfect, posed portraits but authentic connections between women who truly saw and supported each other. As the hour of the ceremony approached, Martha excused herself to join the gathering guests. Lucy made final adjustments to my appearance, then held my gaze steadily. "I know today has complicated emotions," she said. "But remember what Nathan said about your vows, being seen for who you really are, not who others expect you to be. Everyone waiting out there sees the real you, Abby. And we're all so damn happy to be celebrating that person." Her words steadied me as we prepared to leave for the venue, the renovated industrial space filled with local artwork that we'd chosen for its character rather than its prestige. The car ride passed in contemplative silence, my mind alternating between excitement about the future and acknowledgement of the complicated past that had led me here. Walking into the venue's preparation room, I felt a flutter of anxiety. This was the moment when, in traditional weddings, the father of the bride would appear to escort his daughter down the aisle. The absence stretched before me like a void, until Nathan's father James knocked gently on the door. "Abby," he said hesitantly, "I know you've decided to walk yourself down the aisle, and I completely respect that decision. But I wanted you to know, if you change your mind or if it feels too difficult in the moment, I'm here. It would be my honor to stand beside you." His offer, made without pressure or expectation, brought fresh tears. "Thank you, James. That means more than I can express." He nodded, understanding the complexity of my gratitude. "Whatever you decide, we're all here supporting you both." As he left, Lucy handed me a small envelope. "This came for you this morning. I debated whether to give it to you now or later, but..." I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. With trembling fingers, I opened it, bracing for disappointment but hoping against reason for reconciliation. Inside was a check, larger than the one I'd previously returned, and a brief note. "For your future. We expect you'll need it once the reality of your choices becomes clear. Mother and Father." No well wishes for the wedding. No acknowledgement of hurt feelings. Just another transaction masquerading as care, another reminder that their definition of love remained conditional upon meeting their expectations. Lucy watched my face carefully. "Bad?" "Predictable," I replied, folding the note and placing it back in the envelope. "And no longer my concern today." In that moment, I made my final wedding day decision. "I'm walking myself down the aisle," I told Lucy. "Not because I'm alone, but because I'm choosing my path forward with clear eyes and an open heart." The ceremony space transformed through our community's efforts looked nothing like the wedding my parents would have hosted. Instead of formal floral arrangements, handcrafted paper flowers and potted plants created a living, sustainable backdrop. Instead of rigid rows of chairs, guests were arranged in a gentle semicircle, emphasizing connection rather than hierarchy. The olive trees marking my parents' empty seats stood as quiet sentinels, not accusations of absence but affirmations of hope. As the music began, a string quartet playing Debussy rather than traditional wedding march, I took a deep breath and stepped into the doorway alone. The gathered faces turned toward me, and I felt a momentary vertigo at the significance of this threshold. Then my eyes found Nathan, waiting beneath the handcrafted arbor, his expression of wonder and love anchoring me in the present moment. Step by step, I walked toward my future, not escorted or given away, but moving forward of my own volition. The symbolism wasn't lost on me or, judging by the emotional faces I passed, on our guests. This wasn't a defiant statement about not needing anyone, it was an honest acknowledgement that healing sometimes requires walking certain paths alone, even while surrounded by support. When I reached Nathan, he took my hands in his, whispering, "You're incredible," with such sincerity that any lingering sadness dissolved in the warmth of being truly seen. Our officiant welcomed everyone, acknowledging both presence and absence with grace. We gathered today to witness and celebrate a love that has chosen authenticity over expectation, substance over appearance, and genuine connection over obligation. Abby and Nathan have created not just a wedding but a community of support that will sustain their marriage through all its seasons. The ceremony we'd redesigned flowed with personal meaning. Instead of traditional readings, friends shared passages that had actually mattered in our relationship. Instead of generic unity rituals, we invited guests to write messages of wisdom and support on small cards that would be sealed in a box, to be opened on future anniversaries when we might need reminding of this community's belief in us. When the time came for our vows, Nathan spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Abby, I promise to see you, not who others expect you to be or who you sometimes pretend to be, but your authentic self in all its complexity. I promise to create space for your growth, to celebrate your successes without competition, and to stand beside you through failures without judgment. I promise to build a home with you where authenticity is valued above perfection, where vulnerability is met with compassion, and where love is never conditional upon meeting external expectations." My own vows, practiced countless times, still caught in my throat as I began. "Nathan, you've taught me that love doesn't require perfection or performance. With you, I am enough exactly as I am. I promise to bring my authentic self to our marriage each day, the strong and the struggling, the confident and the questioning. I promise to build boundaries that protect our relationship from external pressures while keeping our hearts open to genuine connection." I promise to create with you a family defined not by obligation or appearance but by presence, acceptance, and unconditional love. The exchange of rings. Simple bands engraved with seen and loved, felt like the completion of a circle that had begun the moment we met, each recognizing in the other the possibility of being accepted without performance. When our officiant pronounced us married, the gathered community erupted in genuine celebration, not the polite applause of social obligation but the joyful recognition of authentic love affirmed. As we walked back down the aisle together, I caught sight of the olive trees marking my parents' empty seats. Their absence remained a reality, but no longer the defining reality of this day. The reception unfolded with the same authentic energy, long farm tables encouraging conversation between diverse friends, locally sourced food served family style, handwritten place cards featuring personalized messages of appreciation for each guest's presence in our lives. Without the pressure of parental expectations, we'd created a celebration that genuinely reflected our values rather than social conventions. During the toasts, Nathan's father James stood, glass raised, emotion evident in his voice. When our son first told us about Abby, he didn't lead with her impressive education or family background. He said, "Dad, I've met someone who sees the world with such genuine eyes." Today, we've all been privileged to witness that authenticity, not just in how Abby and Nathan have designed this celebration but in the courage it took to prioritize truth over appearance. He turned to face us directly. "Abby, I want you to know that families take many forms. Ours is richer for including you, exactly as you are." Later, during our first dance, Nathan held me close, whispering, "Any regrets about today?" I considered the question honestly, scanning the room filled with people who had chosen to witness and support our commitment. "Only that it took me so long to understand the difference between being connected and being truly seen," I replied. "But that makes me value what we have even more." As the evening progressed, our wedding photographer captured candid moments of genuine joy, Nathan laughing with his students who had created artwork for the venue, Lucy dancing with Martha, James teaching my college friends his signature moves from the 1970s. These images would tell the story not of who was missing but of who was present, the chosen family we'd gathered through authentic connection rather than social obligation. Perhaps the most unexpected moment came when an elderly couple I didn't recognize approached during the reception. They introduced themselves as the Johnsons, residents at the senior center where Nathan volunteered teaching art classes. "We noticed those empty seats with the olive trees," Mrs. Johnson explained, her eyes kind. "When Nathan mentioned they were reserved in hope, we wondered if we might send a message to whoever couldn't be here." She handed me a small card on which they'd written, "Marriage isn't about perfect people but perfect intention. Wishing you both the courage to remain authentic and the wisdom to leave space for growth, even for those not ready to celebrate with you today." Their thoughtfulness from complete strangers, people who understood absence and reconciliation through their own long lives, touched me deeply. As they moved away, Nathan squeezed my hand. "Community shows up in unexpected ways when you're authentic," he observed. By evening's end, as we prepared to leave amid sparklers and well wishes, I realized something profound had shifted within me. The wedding I'd once imagined, perfect in appearance but potentially hollow in substance, had given way to something far more valuable, a celebration grounded in genuine connection rather than social performance. We'd created not just a memorable event but a foundation for our marriage, one built on being truly seen rather than merely approved of. As Nathan and I drove away from the celebration, I felt not the absence of my parents but the presence of a chosen family who valued authenticity above appearance and connection above convention. That night, in the quiet of our hotel room, I showed Nathan the note and check my mother had sent that morning. Without hesitation, he supported my decision to return it once more, not from anger but from the recognition that true support couldn't be purchased or used as leverage. "I'm not the daughter they wanted," I acknowledged as we lay in the darkness. "And that's painful. But I'm becoming the person I need to be, and that's worth celebrating." Nathan kissed my forehead gently. "The most beautiful thing about today wasn't the decorations or the ceremony. It was watching you walk yourself toward the future you're choosing. Eyes open, heart full, completely present in your own truth." In that moment, I understood that our wedding day had been transformed from what could have been a performance of family tradition into something far more meaningful, a genuine celebration of authentic love and chosen family. The path forward remained complicated, but for the first time, I felt fully equipped to walk it with integrity, compassion, and hope. The morning after our wedding, Nathan and I woke to sunlight streaming through hotel curtains and the strange, wonderful realization that we were now husband and wife. As we lingered over room service coffee, scrolling through early photos our friends had posted, I felt a complex mixture of joy, peace, and lingering sadness. "Look at this one," Nathan said, showing me his phone. Our photographer had captured the moment I reached him at the altar, my face alight with genuine happiness despite the journey that had brought me there alone. "I love how real it is," I observed. "Not perfect, but authentic." The week following our wedding passed in a blur of honeymoon moments, exploring Chicago's hidden gems as if seeing our adopted city through new eyes, opening thoughtful gifts from friends, writing heartfelt thank you notes that acknowledged the meaningful ways our community had supported us. Among these tasks was deciding what to do about my parents. The day after returning to our apartment, I sat at our kitchen table with the check and note from my mother still in its envelope. After careful consideration, I returned it with a brief, honest response. "Dear Mom and Dad, thank you for thinking of us, but we don't need financial assistance. What we value can't be purchased. Our wedding was beautiful, filled with genuine connection and joy. I wish you could have experienced it. The door remains open if you'd like to be part of our lives in ways that respect who we actually are rather than who you wish we would be. With love, Abby." 2 weeks later, a stiff card arrived in response. "Abigail, we've received your note. When you're ready to move beyond this phase of rebellion, we'll be here. Your father's firm still has connections that could benefit your career when you're prepared to take it more seriously. Congratulations on your marriage. We trust you'll contact us when you're ready to discuss your future rationally. Mother and Father." Nathan found me staring at the card, tears threatening. "They still don't get it, do they?" I whispered. "They might not be capable of getting it," he replied gently. "At least not yet." That exchange crystallized my next significant decision. After discussing it with Nathan, I scheduled an appointment with a therapist specializing in family estrangement and childhood emotional neglect. Dr. Rivera's gentle, insightful approach provided validation I hadn't realized I still needed. "What you're describing is conditional love," she explained during our third session. "Your parents offered approval and support only when you conformed to their expectations. That creates a fundamental insecurity, a belief that love must be earned through performance rather than freely given." "But they provided everything materially," I countered, the old guilt surfacing. "Private schools, college tuition, opportunities many people never have." "Provision without presence isn't the same as love," Dr. Rivera noted. "Children need more than material advantages, they need to be seen, accepted, and valued for who they are, not just what they achieve." These sessions helped me understand that the empty chairs at our wedding represented more than a single rejection, they symbolized a lifetime of conditional connection. The insight was painful but liberating. I wasn't broken or unworthy, my parents simply lacked the capacity for the unconditional acceptance all children deserve. As summer transitioned to fall, my professional life took an unexpected turn. The wedding photos our photographer had shared online, particularly the image of me walking alone toward Nathan with quiet determination, had gone viral in creative circles. My design firm received inquiries specifically requesting my aesthetic, what one client called authentic elegance that values substance over appearance. This inadvertent personal branding led to a specialized role developing visual identities for organizations focused on emotional well-being and authentic connection. My own journey had unexpectedly shaped my professional path, allowing me to create work with genuine meaning rather than mere visual appeal. Nathan experienced his own evolution, receiving a grant to develop an after-school art therapy program for students navigating family challenges. Our shared understanding of how conditional love impacts development strengthened both our marriage and our professional contributions. Our first holiday season as a married couple presented fresh challenges. Thanksgiving with the Carters felt like coming home, warm, accepting, genuinely interested in our lives without judgment. Christmas, however, brought another brief, formal card from my parents, including gift certificates to an upscale department store with no personal message. "What do you want to do?" Nathan asked as we stared at the impersonal gesture. After thoughtful consideration, I responded with a holiday card featuring a photo of us at our wedding, surrounded by our chosen family. Inside, I wrote a genuine update about our lives and work, neither apologizing for our choices nor criticizing theirs. I included an invitation to visit Chicago whenever you're ready to get to know us as we actually are. They didn't respond, but the act of reaching out authentically rather than performatively represented important growth on my part. I was learning to maintain appropriate boundaries while leaving space for potential reconciliation, not on their terms or mine, but on the basis of mutual respect and genuine connection. Spring brought unexpected news that shifted the family dynamic yet again. After a routine physical revealed I was pregnant, Nathan and I faced the complex question of how to involve my parents in our child's life. "I don't want to deprive our baby of grandparents," I explained to Dr. Rivera during a particularly emotional session. "But I also need to protect our child from the conditional love I experienced." "That's an important distinction," she observed. "You can offer your parents the opportunity to be involved while maintaining boundaries that ensure your child feels unconditionally accepted." After lengthy discussions with Nathan, I sent my parents a simple announcement of the pregnancy with a clear, compassionate framework. "We're excited to share that we're expecting a baby in November. We hope you'll want to be part of this child's life in ways that celebrate who they are rather than what they achieve. If you're open to building this kind of relationship, we'd welcome the opportunity to reconnect before the baby arrives." The response came not by card but by phone, my mother calling on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice carrying an unfamiliar hesitancy. "Abigail," she began formally, then paused. "Abby. Your father and I received your news. I would like to see you before the baby comes. Perhaps we could visit Chicago in June?" The conversation remained awkward, filled with old patterns and careful navigation of sensitive topics. But beneath the formality, I detected something new, perhaps not the unconditional acceptance I'd once craved, but at least an openness to possibility. Their visit 2 months later reflected this tentative shift. My mother arrived with designer baby clothes and unsolicited advice about private preschools, but also with visible effort to respect our boundaries. My father asked about Nathan's art program with genuine curiosity rather than veiled judgment. The weekend wasn't transformative, but it represented a first small step toward authentic connection. As they prepared to leave, my mother handed me a small package. "This belonged to your grandmother Sophia," she explained. "I thought you might want it for the baby." Inside was a simple silver rattle that had been my childhood comfort object. "You kept this?" I asked, surprised by the sentimental gesture so out of character for my practically minded mother. "Some things matter beyond their practical value," she replied, not quite meeting my eyes. In that moment, I glimpsed the possibility that my parents might be capable of growth too, that perhaps their rigid focus on status and achievement masked their own insecurities and limited emotional toolbox rather than reflecting a lack of love. As my pregnancy progressed, our home filled with evidence of the family we were creating on our terms. The nursery featured artwork created by Nathan's students, handmade furniture from James, and books carefully selected to nurture creativity and emotional intelligence. My parents sent practical items from our registry but also, unexpectedly, a handwritten journal of family medical history and traditions. An acknowledgement of continuity amid change. On a crisp November evening, our daughter Sophia Grace Carter arrived, her tiny features a perfect blend of Nathan and me. Holding her in the hospital room, surrounded by our chosen family with my parents awkwardly but genuinely present via video call, I realized how profoundly my journey had prepared me for motherhood. "I promise to see you," I whispered to my daughter while Nathan looked on with tears in his eyes. "Not who I expect you to be or who others think you should be, but exactly who you are in all your unique complexity. Your worth will never depend on what you achieve or how you perform." You are loved, completely, unconditionally, exactly as you are. 3 months later, as Sophia slept peacefully in her bassinet, I found myself reflecting on the path that had led me here. The wedding my parents had dismissed as trivial had become the catalyst for profound personal growth. Their absence, painful as it was, had created space for me to discover my own values, establish healthy boundaries, and build authentic connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. My relationship with my parents remained complicated, a careful dance of boundary setting and bridge building. Their visits were infrequent and sometimes strained, but I noticed small changes. My mother occasionally asked questions about my work with genuine interest rather than veiled criticism. My father sent articles about creative education without accompanying comments about practical careers. These weren't dramatic transformations, but they suggested capacity for growth I hadn't previously recognized. More importantly, my own relationship with approval and acceptance had fundamentally shifted. I no longer measured my worth through others' validation or twisted myself into shapes designed to earn love that should be freely given. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had led to a life of genuine connection rather than perfect appearance, a life rich with meaning precisely because it embraced imperfection and authenticity. As I look at my sleeping daughter, I understand that the greatest gift I can offer her isn't social advantage or material provision but the freedom to become fully herself, seen, accepted, and loved unconditionally. The path to that understanding was painful but necessary. By learning to walk alone toward authentic connection rather than remaining trapped in the comfortable prison of conditional approval, I discovered something profound. True family isn't determined by blood or obligation but by the daily choice to see each other clearly and love each other anyway. Perhaps you've experienced something similar in your own life, the painful recognition that someone's approval came with conditions you couldn't or shouldn't meet. If so, I hope my story offers some comfort and courage. The journey toward authentic connection isn't easy, but it's infinitely valuable. Sometimes the most difficult paths lead to the most meaningful destinations. Thank you for walking this road with me today. If my story resonated with you, please share your own experiences in the comments. Has there been a moment when you chose authenticity over approval? How have you navigated complicated family relationships while maintaining healthy boundaries? Your stories matter and might provide exactly the encouragement someone else needs to take their own steps toward genuine connection. Don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to join me for more conversations about building authentic relationships and creating a life based on meaningful connection rather than social performance. Until next time, remember that your worth isn't determined by others' approval but by your courage to live authentically.